Hey, Gail. No, I don't want to share that. Okay, I think I got it. Not sure. We'll know when we get there.
Okay, how are you doing?
Okie dokie. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Hanging in there.
Simple things in life. I got bitten by a spider
Oh,
or a mosquito, maybe a tick on my right ear. It is driving me nuts.
hey,
It's
hopefully it
all
wasn't a tick.
swollen and itchy and oozy and
It might be a spider. I think spiders are very itchy. Ticks are
Yep.
not itchy.
yep. I prefer that to a tick, though. I did pull something off of it the other day,
Is this
but
why
I
you were
can't see
gardening?
behind my ear to know, is there a bullseye?
Yeah.
All I know is it's red and inflamed and itchy, and
Well,
so I drink my wine and carry on.
don't let it go too long unattended because
Right. I'm going to have somebody look at it if it continues. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So I see on the menu that Mary Ann is coming back this evening.
No,
Oh, she's on the agenda for a second return.
hold on, let me see.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
Miriam.
Miriam.
Oh, I love your graphic, Miriam. That's lovely.
Thank you. I did that.
Nice. Where were
Was
you
it-
kayaking?
What?
Where were you kayaking?
I think that was kind of from my memory of a few different.
Oh, this is a
places.
painting.
What?
This is a painting.
Yeah, that was a painting.
Ah, wow. Even more impressive.
Thanks.
Gail, I don't see that,
Okay.
but the answer is no.
Oh, okay. I looked at the agenda on the MyTownGov. Hi, Nate.
Hey, Nate.
Hello.
Oh, love the butterflies.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yay. I've got Asclepias all over the yard and it's just now coming into bloom. So I hope to have visitors.
Nice. Yeah, I've seen swallowtails, but I have not seen monarchs.
No, not yet.
Is the butterflies just to make you happy? Or is there?
Yeah, pretty much. I like to brighten things up a little bit. I know it's very drab, behind me. So
I think you'll have to wear interesting shirts every meeting.
yeah, I think so. Or I'll have to change rooms. The whole house isn't like this, but
Nate, we were just talking about Miriam's graphic that she has put. That's a painting she's done.
nice.
It's not a photograph of her kayaking. Hi, Zoe.
Hey, Zoe. How you doing? Oopsie.
I'm good.
Good. What are you eating?
I'm drinking.
Ah, okay. Very important.
Yes.
There's Henry. Gail, I'm giving you your usual role that you don't really have to do of like co-host, just in case someone shows up and I'm talking and I miss them.
Oh, okay. So I to let them in.
Yeah, just be my second pair of eyes, but
Okay.
so we need Leslie and is that, oh, and Graham.
Ask to unmute. Henry. Unmute, Henry.
Howdy.
Hey, Henry.
Hey.
So why don't we give Leslie and Graham a couple minutes and You guys see that?
Yes,
Nope, not that. Here's the thing I'm sharing.
the agenda.
There it is. Yeah.
Oh, this is very different from what's posted on my government.
I posted this, what's today? Today's Tuesday, on like Friday or Saturday, I think.
We keep calling it a fuel survey. We ditched that.
It's just copy and paste. It's, what do we want to call
No offense.
it? Okay, where are our other members? Um,
There's 7-1. Wow, that's next week.
oh, oh, oh. So Nate, those edits sound like they were helpful for
Very
the,
helpful. Yeah,
cool.
yeah, I had several folks offered suggestions and they were all very helpful, so.
Good. Nothing like teamwork.
mm.
Whoops. I just disappeared.
I see you.
Here's Graham. I let him in. How can I get me back?
We can see you.
Oh, isn't that interesting? There I am. Okay.
Okay, cool. Well, why don't we start, since we have everyone except Leslie, she can join us. So I'm going to just share the agenda just so we're all on the same page since there was confusion. Where'd it go? There we go. So you guys see that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So does this all look good to you guys? What you were expecting? Here's also great. So if this is good, I think we'll just proceed. So Zoe, you're good for taking minutes? Great, thank you. So we're starting cycle 2 of our minute taking. So I'll call us to order at 7:05. Hey, Graham.
Hello all.
How are you?
Hi, Graham.
So
There's Leslie. Hi,
Yeah.
Leslie.
Leslie's on her way in. So I'll see if there's any public comment. Henry, since you're the only public, do you have any comment?
Good to see everybody. I'm just visiting, so I'm
Okay.
interested in hearing what you have to say.
Okay, that sounds good. Hey, Leslie,
Hey, Michael.
Hey, there she is.
welcome to the party.
Thank you.
So we just went,
Yep, go ahead.
we just went over the agenda and I was just about to check in about the minutes. So what I'll point out is I emailed with Leslie and basically said what I'd like to do is wait and hold off on reviewing and approving the May 21st minutes until next month, since I know that I had a bunch of comments. It sounds like Gail had, and if people had comments, but it seems like this batch would be good just to give a little bit more time. And Leslie, if I think what would be good is if you get comments from people in the next like week or so, you can just redo it and then send it out to folks and we can review it and they'll be all queued up for our July meeting, if that makes sense. But does that work for people?
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
Also, I'm willing to now help out with minutes.
Hey,
More.
We'll stick you back in the queue.
Can you back in the queue?
Yeah. But you definitely you had good reason for a pass, so.
Mhm.
So why don't we move in? We're totally ahead of the game. Oh, Gail, sorry.
Um, I would just like to, I really appreciate your wanting to add information, Leslie. But you gave yourself a homework assignment that is way beyond the task of taking minutes. So ease up on yourself, I think. Really, for the minutes, it just should be a recording and not even word by word of the issues that are brought up or the discussion points that are brought up in a meeting. And where it needs to be detailed is really, if there's a vote taken, what is the question? If there's contentious debate one way or another, that should probably be in a capsule and then the actual vote. But otherwise, it's really just, here's a point that was brought up, here's a point that was brought up. It's not like you have to explain or
Yeah, what do you mean by like if there's a debate, put it in a capsule?
if the debate goes on for 10 and 15 minutes, you don't need to go through all the back and forth about that. Just, a point is made, another point is made, the vote was taken, and so it's really to put on the record what kinds of things were discussed at the meeting. And if there's a vote taken, that needs to be for, I guess, legal purposes, but at least what people know happened at the meeting. But it's not a place, Leslie, you went out and did some homework on this. I mean, that's really way above and beyond the call of the minutes taker. So
What's also, what I was expressing was that it is really about recording the discussion. I mean, the way the law reads is minutes need to enable a reasonable person to understand what happened at the meeting. So it's capturing the essence, like you said, Gail, of what was discussed. And if there
the
was,
essence, yeah.
if there were points, you don't even have to have attribution necessarily. It's just sort of like, point A was raised, point B was raised on this particular issue so that people know what the conversation was about. And exactly if there's a vote, you need to know who moved and seconded, and then because we're online, we have to do the roll call vote. I mean, I think we now have enough good examples. So, if people have questions, just going to the ECAC webpage because all the minutes are there. Miriam.
Did I get a copy of those minutes?
You should have. You said
They're on the webpage.
yeah.
Oh, they're on the Google Drive or whatever?
No,
the
but
webpage.
Leslie sent out the draft one to the ECAC
Okay,
distribution
All right.
list. So they should.
Okay.
They went like yesterday or the day before. I think was the first iteration.
Yeah.
Oh, Leslie's minutes. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent out something and then I did some further research, just also
Yeah, I can't
This-
find, I can't, oh, the
it
June
just went to
20.
the email.
Okay. Oh,
So I sent
it-
first
just-
draft and I apologize to Nate because I just kind of had some notes in my notebook and just sort of said Nate's going to report on this and kind of glossed over it. So my apologies there. And I just, yesterday was one of those days that was not my favorite. So I just sort of felt like, let me just get this, let me explain as best I can what happened and then some. And I understand now it could have been much shorter, but I kind of got into some difficulties yesterday. And I just was like, and the minutes reflected that. And I also contemplated like leaving the committee because I just felt like, I don't know how effective we are if we're just funneling stuff in based on what I've seen with our government. So I kind of had a moment of like, I think I'm out of here. And when Henry showed up a few weeks ago, I asked Henry, do you want to be on this? Because I'm in the middle of so many different things. And I have to say, after the last town meeting, I lost a lot of heart around what we can do. And minutes was my attempt to say, hey, folks, a lot of people from the town have asked me about community solar because I raised it at the town meeting. And I just felt like, well, let me gather the information so it's out there. And I appreciate Michael's edits because some of the new stuff got in there and some of the extra stuff didn't. So thank you for that. So that's where I'm at. Yesterday was kind of emotionally difficult for me on a few things, and today everything got better. So
The right direction. So, we'd like to keep you, but keep us posted. And
sure.
there are good days and bad days. I think we all have them. So
Well, yeah, and if anybody is banging down the door and would like to join, please let me know that option might exist, because anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to help, but I guess I just felt discouraged and frustrated by our government in town. And I know we're part of the solution, but I got to a place of like, what can we really do other than suggest things?
Graham, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, Leslie, what the town has to do and what the state has to do and what the government has to do, what the Fed has to do, and the world. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
thing is an uphill. Was Sisyphus pushing a rock up a mountain? It's not anything trivially simple that, and there's no obvious easy. I mean, what we've taken on is the task of our era, I think. So.
Oh yeah, I think yesterday I just sort of put together the world events, the state events, everything, and just felt like maybe I'm better off doing the work that I do in the world and touching people. And anyway, I welcome everybody's comments on the minutes. I understand it's basically he said, she said, if we voted, this happened, so that there's a record. And
And I think, yeah, and I
put
would
up
just
the minutes as long as I could. Then I got.
well, and the one thing I would offer, just to sort of like give it a little bit more hopefulness, is that, I mean, in our work and in our discussions, when we're reporting out, what the minutes end up doing is they create a document trail that can educate the community. So as we're discussing things and raising things, and up, part of it is preserving the discussion. So both for community solar and aggregation, and like we're going to talk about the survey tonight. So like and all the topics, if we capture them, they're preserved, and then people can go back. So it really is sort of setting a foundation. And at some point, people are going to pay attention to this committee, and they're going to say, "What were you doing?" And we'll then be able to sort of it'll be there for people to read. And I got to say, my experience is people read minutes. Not everybody, but some people read minutes, and for a variety of reasons. So, well, why don't we move on? And thank you again, Leslie, for doing another round of it. So if we switch to working through our mandate on the hazard mitigation plan, this is Nate, and just to review, especially I think Miriam, you might know, but Nate had a suggestion 2 meetings ago where part of the charge says that we're going to make recommendations in regards to the hazard mitigation plan and the MVP plan. And so Nate's suggestion is, let's look at these things and figure out, of the items identified in both of those plans, what we can lift up so it can help inform part of what we're doing. So last meeting we did MVP, and this meeting Nate's going to share his analysis of how hazard mitigation might intersect with what we're doing. So Nate, you got the floor.
Thanks. Yeah, at our last meeting, we reviewed the prioritized actions from the municipal vulnerability plan. So that was, obviously a process that involved, a lot of people in the community providing input there. The hazard mitigation plan came out the following year in 2021, and FEMA requires that communities adopt a pre-disaster mitigation plan as a condition for mitigation funding. So sort of, I think it's probably analogous to our status as a green community in that, you know, if you are able to maintain or fulfill certain requirements, then it makes you eligible to apply for certain funding streams. So the hazard mitigation plan document, it's almost 300 pages long. So what I'm trying to do is, you know, just condense my reading of that document into something more bite-sized that we can kind of talk through. But, you know, it starts out by providing a profile of the community. And then it describes 14 natural hazards as well as human-made hazards before it presents prioritized action areas. So helpfully, each hazard section, it highlights threats to energy. So there's, you know, where relevant, an entire paragraph that that relates the hazard to energy. So our sort of mandate area, which is super helpful. And I should also highlight that there's a real focus on viewing these threats through a climate lens. So, you know, and just emphasizing that continued greenhouse gas emissions will make all of this worse. So what I tried to do is just excerpt the energy related passages under the hazard review. And then I organized the parts of the action plan that seemed most relevant to us. And just before I really kick off, because the report is informed by the municipal vulnerability plan, most of the recommendations are, you know, repeats of stuff that we covered at our last meeting. So I'm going to be moving pretty quickly through this, but I wanted to present text as well as just sort of talking through things, because I know people sort of absorb information in different ways. So snow and hurricanes, the energy related risk with these threats is primarily through power outages, through destruction of infrastructure. Okay, so similarly, severe thunderstorms and microbursts affect utilities and are expected to get worse over time. So, you know, those sort of long tail events that would be quite rare are, like the microbursts, are expected to occur more frequently in the coming years. Tornadoes and wildfires, again, reference to power lines, the distribution of electricity in our community. All of these affect, along with earthquakes, as well as landslides, are all affecting energy in a similar way through the destruction of transmission of electricity. So extreme temperatures is a category where there's a little more nuance here, because extreme temperatures affect the demand of electricity, and they also stress the ability of the system to deliver it as well. So, you know, really getting into the temperature anomalies and how that affects the stress of the system overall. Flooding can affect energy infrastructure, and it also exposes a vulnerability of having fossil fuel infrastructure at all. So, you know, that first set of hazards are really just the natural world disrupting what we've built as a society. But you know, flooding, this really jumped out at me that yes, it can affect the distribution of power, but just by virtue of having large tanks of oil in our basements, and scattered about, flooding can dislodge some of that and affect the quality of our water. So I thought that particularly jumped out to me. And this is sort of in the same vein. Under human-made hazards, the report points out the dangers of having trucks that are regularly carrying fossil fuels through town.
Right.
So those are the hazards. And now I'm going to transition to some of the prioritized actions. And one of the ways the report is super helpful to us, I think, is that it identifies which departments and committees we might engage on these issues if we wanted to devote time to them, if we felt like it was a priority for us to weigh in on some of these through our liaising with some of the other parts of the town government. So I've tried to organize at least some of this by the responsible town entity. So starting off, you might recall that in the MVP report, there was interest in how do we respond as a community when our primary means of communication is voice over internet protocol. If the electricity goes down, a lot of people would be quite isolated, or are quite isolated when that occurs. So are there opportunities to enhance emergency communication capabilities, given how reliant communications are on electricity, that kind of energy? And then there were several planning board related recommendations. So the first one is an opportunity to start to put utility lines underground where there is new development. So one of the ways to avoid down trees and microbursts and snowstorms from cutting out the electricity is to get the lines out of the trees and get them underground, right? So I know in cities that can be an expensive proposition, but it is highlighted here. And I've also just at the very end of each bullet placed whether it was a low or a high priority suggestion. I think we talked very briefly about the master plan idea and the wide array of opportunities for informing an updated master plan with the best thinking in green infrastructure. So that was a highlight, a high priority thing. And then finally here on this slide, reviewing land use regulations and opportunities to get climate resilience into regulatory review. So that's planning board stuff. There were two recommendations related to the school. One having to do with air conditioning, which for us, I think, causes me to think about heat pump technology and just making sure that any effort to address this, if there's a decision to go forward with something like this, that it's informed by the best technologies. And then having the elementary school as an emergency shelter is also one of the recommendations. And I think I included this recommendation, I think probably because of the AC component. Okay, there were two recommendations related to trees here. And there were a lot of different constituencies within local government that have some say or responsibility, and also National Grid, so that's private sector, I guess. But again, like the idea to make sure that power lines are protected from encroaching branches from trees, and then forest management. is in here. So flagging solar guidelines here. And then finally, this is just seeking every opportunity to put power lines underground. So I think that was the final recommendation there. I'm just moving people around, so sorry. Nope, the actual last one is engaging, sorry, FERCog. I assume that's how you vocalize the
Yes,
acronym.
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe that's apart from the listserv or getting information from the regional group. This is highlighting opportunities that might exist by engaging some of the regional organizations as well. All right. That's everything.
Cool.
Yeah, for this.
Wow,
Thank you, Nate.
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, this is both analyses are really helpful. So I guess do people have comments or thoughts now that we've looked at both of them in terms of how we might take this information and apply it? Or
I had a thought, which is I met with Marianne, the librarian, and she was talking about this is related to communication and during emergencies. And she said that there was an effort at some point to have neighborhood pods.
Right.
And that there were a few that were successfully created. So people can kind of check in on each other. But I think that could get reinvigorated.
Yeah, there's their neighborhood, I don't remember what they called it, emergency something or other. I was I am the coordinator for our neighborhood, such as it is. But I don't know how many other neighborhoods. I think that it was very selective in terms of which neighborhoods were able to coalesce into kind of a working community. But the idea was, that you had a small enough group so that if there were power outages or a disaster, people could go door to door and pass messages and check on people and, help people if, somebody couldn't get out of their house or there was a tree down, things like that, make sure people were safe. Or even, if people had generators or wood stoves that people could, stay with neighbors if they needed to, if they lost heat.
Leslie?
I saw it was a high priority to make sure that the wires are clear and any trees that are in the way be cut down. And this may not be the place to raise it, but I know that we have an excellent tree warden who has not been paid in 2.5 years. And he's not sure. I mean, he's tried everything he can to get paid. Maybe he'll quit. I don't know. I mean, I think that's important.
He didn't get reappointed tonight.
He did not?
What's that?
I didn't, it sounded to me like he did not get reappointed tonight.
Okay. Well, he's also like $2,500 out of, it's not been paid.
Well, I think in terms
Anyway.
of, yeah, well, what, I don't think we can deal with the payment part, but I think in terms of centering the importance of having someone who's overseeing tree management, given these issues is important. So not having someone responsible, if this is going to be a priority, is something that, we could put forward as part of, a package. Nate?
Yeah, I was just trying to think through how you take a 300, basically 500 pages of document and then convert it into something with traction. And I think I was hoping for like these 2 meetings to kind of put a bunch of stuff on table, and I wonder if people want to take some time to kind of read through some of this material, you know, and maybe like the source documents, because stuff might jump out to other people that didn't jump out to me. And I don't know if we would want to, I mean, if something seemed like a really good fit as an issue for people on the committee, or if, I mean, I know some people wear multiple hats if they see opportunities for outreach. I know, Michael, one of the issues that you've talked about is how do we liaise with some of the other committees. There may be some, you know, relatively obvious things from all of this that would then just become something that we do updates on, or check in on, or just try to move forward in one way or another. But yeah, that's.
I have a comment. And it can I throw it?
Yeah, yeah, then Gail will go.
Yeah. You know, aside from thinking about energy, which this was kind of focusing on somewhat, is there are other issues around emergency management or hazard mitigation involving roads and stormwater resilience that are really something I think the town needs to focus on, because we have 16 miles of town managed dirt roads, and then I don't know how many miles, but some miles of private dirt roads that the town doesn't manage, but has the responsibility for emergency response to. And all of those roads are particularly vulnerable to stormwater surges and washouts, and becoming, you know, becoming an issue in a case of an emergency or a forest fire. After, you know, just there are all sorts of ways that it's a problem. And I don't know, I think the town needs to develop a more of an action plan around this,
Yeah,
because
I'm sorry.
what they're doing right now is kind of kicking the can down the road and doing little short-term fixes on things, but never addressing any of the larger issues. And even apart from the energy issues, if we don't have the arteries for transportation, if they get closed because of a disaster, then everything else doesn't work. You know, you can have air conditioning and a generator at the fire station, but if people can't get through the roads to get there, anything.
Yeah, and I would just interject before going to Gail, is that, you know, we're energy and climate. So some of these hazards are, they're climate related, not necessarily directly energy, like the stormwater, for example. Gail?
First, in response to your remarks, Miriam, the part of the open space plan has that very issue about roads and accessibility, and particularly the private roads and the drainage, or the bad drainage from them, and the consequences to the whole town. So that's a 7-year plan, but there are also particular departments assigned up on those topics of roads. So this again speaks to what you brought, Nate, of liaising with other community, with other boards, with other activities. So I would take that to the open space committee, since they're in charge of the plan. My first response, though, to Nate was in terms of what you presented here, what jumped out to me are both those things that you brought up about the school, about mini splits and so on, seem to me perfectly lined up with what we might apply for grants for, and that would have to do with an audit of those buildings and the intention of having them as emergency measures or increased accessibility, usability for kids. I see that, you know, the who's he what's this is coming down the line on the agenda tonight. The audit, the 5-letter word audit, and it might more properly come up there.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just going to jump in. I mean, I think, Nate, I had a similar hope as you did, you know, that by going through the MVP and the hazard mitigation, that we would be able to come up with some kind of, you know, prioritized listing and focus, both in terms of how we reach out to committees, who have, relevant responsibilities. I think the presumption would be, I guess what I'm thinking is, the presumption is 99.9% of people in town, maybe more, have not read either of these reports.
Yeah.
So, if what we can do is say it's our responsibility, which is so far been Nate's, but I think we should all own it, to sort of take the Reader's Digest version and also look at the source documents, come up with a list next time and see what rises to the top so that we can sort of itemize, what priority things we want to do. And there might be different actions, like it could be liaison with the committee. It could also be looking for grants, and so like the select board usually is the one, is the body that applies for the grants, but it can be other committees or other individuals who actually do the writing. So if there's other actions besides those two, but I think being able to do that, my sense is between, Gail, you talked about open space, 3 years ago, we didn't have any of these things. So we're in a perfect spot where we now have very current, very comprehensive plans. And if we can go through it, we can come up and cross-reference and figure out who do we can all go to different committees, or we can go to the select board and say, this is what we think, but basically lay out a plan that's bite-sized enough for each committee, because no one's going to read these things. So, Gail, are you still raising your hand?
I am.
Okay.
In terms of things we might do, your point's well taken about 99 and 44 and 100% of the public don't know about either of these plans, much less having waded through them. But this points to the whole issue of communication with people in town. And it seems to me we might well have forums or public panels or on these very issues, because they affect how many people in town. And if the people on these private roads don't know who to turn to and just bemoan the fact that they're in trouble all the time with every time it rains, get some discussion out there, get some orientation of actions that various committees might take toward some of these issues. Bring it up as a public issue, rather.
Yeah, good point. Leslie?
Well, I want to say that I agree with Miriam that the stormwater management is huge and interweaving with other committees, especially the Conservation Commission, because if we still get clear cutting, we're going to get more flooding on the roads, especially if it's clear cutting off of dirt roads. And, I think that was part of my frustration yesterday, just feeling like, yes, Graham, it is the whole world, but in our town, it's happening too, where I don't know how to prevent it. We do have laws, but again, with the community solar, there are grants available, and that would mean that we would have batteries that are not going into the grid. We'd have our own non-toxic zinc batteries, so that the school could be a viable place and other places could be good emergency places if we've got our own system going and we don't encourage any clear cutting and perhaps discipline clear cutting.
Well, if I can wrap us up on this one and maybe make a suggestion for next steps. Maybe for next meeting, Nate, if I can give you one more assignment, perhaps, if you can take the prioritized itemized stuff that you already did for these two and maybe put them in a spreadsheet and then share them out. And people can look at them, and maybe we can put like columns for, reach out to other committees, write grants. I think, as a separate thing, Gail, I think you're right. What I would, and I think coming out of that, like if we come up with a list, we can then report out to the select board, which I'd like to do in the next, I don't know, month or two. So that would be a deliverable to say, here's the things that coming out of town documents we've identified through our energy and climate lens. And one of the discrete suggestions, I think, would be a public forum to begin that engagement and figure out, there's some choreography there about who presents on what. But I think it's this way we would get to committees who can do the work and have the responsibility as well, so to educate and engage the community. But if Nate does that, and if we can all sort of agree to just, look that over before next meeting, we can sort of start coming up with something that's a list. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Cool, great. Well, thank you, Nate, again for this. And I love your black and white presentations. They're quite compelling. So Gail, so we're up to updates and discussion, and we've got 2 continuing items, the survey that Gail led, and then reporting out from Zoe on the resilience and sustainable lifestyle inventory, which I just made up that name. I don't know if it's correct, but Gail, you want to tell us?
Can you see the survey?
Yes.
I can walk you through it, and I'll just point to the main things. Our first question was about home energy and did not turn out what we thought we were going to turn up. What we did not ask was, what is your primary fuel source? Because a lot of folks answered wood that I believe are not primarily wood, but clearly oil and propane are the chief energy sources here. But very interesting that many people, well, 41 people, are thinking of changing their fuel type and from oil and propane to air source heat pump and geothermal. So that's encouraging. Vehicles, not so surprising. Clearly a view that if there were a charging station downtown, it would be used by greater than half the folks who responded. Let me back up here. The questions about electricity were really very interesting. For one thing, the cost of electricity is very important to folks. But so is the renewable source. And this gives me great hope. Look at 96%, even greater than the cost. 96 entries, not percents. Folks are interested or invested in its being renewable source, which gives me great encouragement for our going forward with any of the CCA plans. Non-fluctuating cost rate, it's not so interesting. Out of our folks into respondents, 182 respondents, 38 have roof mounted solar and 34 have net metered, sorry. Where'd it go? 34 have.
The ground mounted is 9. Is that what you wanted?
I lost it. Okay, thank you. Yeah, 9. One is, so 3 people actually responded to the ECAC with responses to the questionnaire, which was very interesting. And Susan Millinger pointed out, you didn't give us a chance to say we have more than one system. Oh, hello. Who would have thought that? She has 2 roof systems. Okay. And she gave us the information so I could put that into the database, although it doesn't show up in the survey responses. But that was a good tell. And then the years and what. But most interesting, I think, are the answers to that open-ended question at the end, because it gets to what you, Michael and Nate, both pointed to, and that is attitudes. What are you really interested in? And over, there were comments about, I didn't know anything about this committee. Where would we go for information? We need a central source of information. Hello, sign up. And invited for forums and discussions and bringing people in town up to date with current incentives, discounts, whatever programs there are for increased solar, also ways to reduce costs. that may or may not be within our power, but certainly we can lever up some information on how to, well, Leslie, to your point about co-op, getting 5 or 6 neighbors together to organize a single solar panel setup that for those things. And this was one of the reasons that I required a street address, so that for those people who say, I want solar but can't afford it, I want solar but know how to get there, I want help on getting solar, put them on a map. It turns out that's going to be harder than I thought, but put them on a map. Do they cluster in a neighborhood where somebody's barn roof might serve as the rooftop source for panels for 4 or 5 neighbors, that kind of thing. Let's see, accessibility. So a big impress on making more solar installations in town, on town buildings, on town properties. Yes, town vehicles should be electric. A big interest, 31.6% of the answers were about community solar and solar storage. So Nate, in terms of backup or enthusiasm for community solar, I think we're going to have a short way to go on that. It's going to be, it looks, people are already asking for it, both for electricity and for renewable sources of electricity, both those things. And if we can come up, if we as a committee can come up with an immediate behavioral response in getting a reduced electricity cost for the entire town, I think we've accomplished a lot already, and gives us credibility for getting things done. I keep coming back to that. There were several comments to the aside on this. Sounds like you all are interested in the activity, on really getting things done, on action, really getting things done. Keep up the good work, yay, rah, you know. So several comments about wanting accountability of energy use in town buildings, and that gets us to the Mass Energy Insight database, which we should soon have access to. Interesting suggestion about could there be tax rebates for families that have electric vehicles or can show reduced energy costs. That's going to be a very tricky one given, you know, our small basis of tax money in town, but something to consider. And there were a few entries for public transport. So.
Great. Gail, thank you. This is a great initiative. So thank you for taking the lead on that. And
Yeah.
It was,
have,
I think we learned a lot. And mostly I think it showed there were over and over again, wow, you guys are really onto something. And, you know, finally, somebody's doing something about these things. These have been issues of long standing. And, oh, on terms of our questions about rooftop and ground mounted solar, we've got some folks in the know who've been there. 2007, 2010, 2011. I mean, and some of these systems are pretty good size. So you'll notice that in the, I asked about the KW capacity, and it turned out that was, I thought, a straightforward question, but was caused only confusion. So I blacked out. I said that was non-usable data. Came back with some wicked answers like 305. It's like, really? And it turns out that the question was not understood. So that was just wanting to know how big systems were, and that was not the way to ask, apparently. So
people have any thoughts they wanted to share on this topic? Oh,
Really great.
yeah. Sorry.
I just responding to the expressed desire of people to have like a central source of information.
yes.
And that linked in my mind to the idea of these neighborhood pods and having kind of a point person within pods that, is super well informed about all of these issues, how to save people money in all of these ways. And then they can report back to their community. So that could be another role of a neighborhood pod leader.
But I have a question for us, which is, this was obviously very public. So we announced at a town meeting, we distributed to the town. I feel like we want to report back to the select board on this. But I don't want to do it prematurely. So we can hold off until we bundle things together, like the hazard mitigation MVP information and this. Or we can send this off with just a little, the results with a little cover explanation and just share it and then report on it later. But I think, Gail, to your point, that we're doing stuff, being able to feed it back to the select board would be a good activity. It's just a question of how and when. So I'm wondering if people have thoughts. Gail.
I did say online when we posted the survey that the results would be posted within a couple of weeks. And that is a simple post of that PDF. That's all right. But it comes back to this basic problem of, okay, so we have a web page. How do we get people to go to the web page? How do we get people to look for information, or where to look for information? They say, we didn't know this, or where could we find this? Or how can we focus their search for information? That itself is a communication problem that has not been solved yet.
Yeah, it's endemic, I think.
And that's part of my web committee hat too, so.
And I think no matter what you do, people always say they don't know, even if you did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
But, Graham?
And people have to get to the point where they're interested in action. I mean, everybody can, the people who completed these questionnaires, these surveys, could go research stuff. They're probably haven't gotten to a point where they're actually acting, mobilizing themselves. So it's how do you get people to that tipping point of motivation also to take personal action when it's around things like, solar energy or vehicles.
Gail and then Graham.
There were two entries. So, I've got a special, I can read these things, right? And there were a couple of entries that said, I didn't know about the committee. Who can I contact to learn more? Or how can I know about blah, blah? Do I have the committee's permission, I guess, to respond to them individually and say, here's who we are, here's our webpage, blah, blah, blah. Is that okay?
Totally, that makes great sense. And we could send out an email blast to say, hey, anyone who responded to the energy survey, or anyone who's interested, it does now, there's a link, and that would take them to the link that would be able to see other things, right? I mean, that puts them in the right place to look at other stuff as well. Instead
of just putting the PDF in the town announcement, put the link in the town announcement where they will find, very good.
Right. Yeah, and I would follow up and say, send them to the ECAC page, even if there's a link on that, because then they'll go, oh, it's there.
Right. And point out, for instance, that on Thursday, there's already an event on the things happening page that they might be interested in. Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
Great.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I would say, Gail, in terms of your other question, I mean, it seems like there's general agreement that it's fine for you to respond. I think I would just say generally, like on other committees that are a little, more politically fraught, so select board, planning board, when people have questions, we sort of designate, because so if someone writes to the planning board as an example, and they have an issue, what we've basically done, and we did on select board, was respond and acknowledge that they asked the question, and then say we can't really have public conversation online via email, but we invite you to come to a meeting where you can make a comment or public comment. I think for our committee, that's fine that if you respond, because we're not politically fraught. If we get to that point, we can revisit it, but until that point, I think, and if there's an email that just comes to the general ECAC, either you can respond, or if you want me to as the chair, but I think right now we're into education and engagement. We're not in a minefield of politics.
Well, and particularly if it's at the end of the survey, we said, we would appreciate your including your email address and name for follow-up. Well, this is an immediate follow-up and could be seen that way as basically a personal response.
Yeah, I mean, if you have most emails, I think it couldn't hurt to send it directly to emails, because people will open them more than they will a town announce.
Right.
So you can send to Leslie.
Henry's hand has been up forever.
Oh, sorry, Henry.
I'm wondering about the percentages of households that answered the survey, and if people might say, oh, now that we know there's something, I'd like to contribute some information. So we have, because I don't know how many households there are. I think there's maybe
884.
What's that?
884 households.
Right. So we didn't really get even half response.
Oh, half? Oh my God. What survey gets half percent? We got 21%, which is
Amazing.
very good. Yeah.
Yeah, from a data perspective, more is better, but the response rate was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But we could put a link. It depends if we wanted to reopen it and just keep gathering data. I don't know if that's helpful at this point. I think what Gail had said in the past is we can circle back and do something else later. This is sort of the first pass to inform.
Right.
But Henry, did you want to say something?
You're muted.
Yeah, quick observation about communication. As you know, my field is communication. I've been doing it for 40 years, teaching at UMass, et cetera. But more especially communicating science and issues of social change. But one of the things that I could offer the group here is a short presentation. I can get into, we're all sort of communicators. We're all born communicators, but there are ways of doing this. It would take too long to summarize in this setting, but I would say it would be interesting just to share a few insights into what we've learned from the research precisely on these questions. Sustainability, how do you communicate sustainability? How do you communicate science, essentially? And largely because, I think there are two assumptions people make about this. One is we just need to get more information out. Sorry, that's
Yeah.
It's a useful thing, but it doesn't cut it, because typically what you need to really do is understand your population. Where are the people here? Where do they go for information? So there's a bit of research that would be involved by figuring that out. Where do they seek out information? It could be the library, could be many, school, could be, but these have to be identified. Anyway, I would offer to do that if you'd like.
Thank you, Henry. So Gail, how about we make this the last one and then we'll move on
Yeah,
to sleep.
I think the issue is engagement. You can put all the information out there in the world, but if it doesn't engage anyone or if nobody engages with it, then it's not communicated.
That's correct. That's correct. But there are ways of doing that, and people actually specialize in figuring that out.
Yeah.
How do we
So,
do?
Yeah, so Henry, I would say thank you for the invitation, and maybe you and I can just sort of talk
Yeah.
separately online and figure out what would make sense. But
Sure.
it seems like if we want to be effective, we should be effective.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd be open to having Henry do a short presentation. I think that'd be awesome.
Cool. Great. Thank you.
Okay.
So I just want to say, I think if it's okay with everybody, I think if we can go to 9 and stop at 9, as opposed to 8:45, because I want to have a good conversation about the next steps. But I think the next few items are we're a thoughtful, talkative crowd, so it might not be all short, but
I have to bail at 8:45, sorry.
okay. that's fine. So we got 4 new items. I'll just mention them and we'll see if we want to balance. So there's the energy audit for current municipal buildings. There's the Mass Save new construction assistance. There's Shutesbury's ARPA money. And then there's the green energy Pelham aggregation, which I can just say was supposed to be tonight. It got postponed. So that's that one. But they were going to, this is a nonprofit for the Pelham.
And that's CCA.
Yeah, that's one of the CCAs. They're supposed to have the kickoff meeting tonight, which none of us would have been able to attend. I got the email I sent to you. I don't think they offered a date. So we can see, but so for the energy audit, I forget who raised that. Was someone interested in raising that? Gail?
I raised it.
Yeah,
We are eligible for a Green Communities grant this fall. But before we go anywhere to know what to get a grant for, it seems to me we need to know where we stand, which is to say we need an audit. The last time we had an audit was 2009. I think a few things have changed since then.
yeah. Do you know, what's the timeline for the grant? Like when's the deadline for?
It's September, October.
Hmm.
The application.
And
We-
do you mean an audit of all the town buildings too? Is that what you?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I have no sense of what that would take. Is that
It makes
doable?
connection with the folks at National Grid for the existing buildings and with somebody else at National Grid for the proposed library in terms of future planning. And they come and do it and tell us what needs to be done. And we use that as a basis for application for grants.
So if we were to do that, my sense is probably we'd tell Becky that we were doing it. She doesn't have to be involved necessarily, but we should just let her know. And then if you, Gail, it sounds like you might want to be the point person, or if someone wants to join you to sort of, do we have to meet them? The National Grid folks?
I think it's simply a conversation.
Okay,
The National Grid, Mark sent the contact information.
okay. It seems like getting an audit, no matter what, would make sense. And if we do it in a timely fashion, it keeps the options open. So does anyone have an objection to sort of Gail initiating the process and both with National Grid and then giving Becky a
Go
heads up?
for it. Yeah.
Cool. Okay,
Shall do.
cool. Thank you, Gail.
So I guess you'd have to tell Becky, and you'd also then
Yeah,
tell the school and the. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when we talk to National Grid, we'll find out what's involved. So,
There's a straightforward protocol of how it's managed. So that's
yeah.
okay.
So, and if there's any questions, I think, if you need my help at some point, just let me know. And then Mass Save new construction, is that, you're the funding guru? Is this something you stumbled on as well? Or is that somebody else?
That's the piece to talk to about the new construction for energy conservation going forward. So
Oh, they're connected.
it's just, yeah, it's just a different person to talk to.
Okay, cool. Great. So the only other thing in the new items is I sent out an email that Becky sent us. And so according to Becky, the town is getting $525,000 in ARPA funds, which is the federal money that everyone's getting for infrastructure. It goes to the states, and then the state distributes it to the towns and cities. It sounds like $300,000 is going to go to the school roof project if we don't get the grant, and then there'd be another remaining $225,000 that are up for grabs. And she was saying that at the July 5th meeting of the select board, they're going to be discussing this, and they want some input and feedback by July 1st. So I wanted to throw it out because this is an opportunity if we wanted. 2 things that just came to mind based on our previous conversation, just to quickly start the conversation. One, I think if we look at some of the priorities in the MVP and hazard mitigation plans, that might make sense. And the 2 that jumped out for me was we could ask to put some of it towards a climate adaptation fund. So we don't have to necessarily have a solution, but if we're funding it, then we can tap into it at a later date. But it's harder to get the money than to come up with the ideas. And then the other, just wearing my planning board hat, listening to Nate talk, is getting money for a consultant to help with the master plan process, which would be huge. So that's
With what process, Michael?
the master plan. Because when we did the master plan last time, apparently there was a consultant, but I think you need someone who can look at it, maybe help facilitate public meetings, write it up, all that stuff. That none of us really has the full time to do. But do people have other ideas? Because I think I can send an email to Becky and the select board with, and I can
Well,
attend that.
there's been talk, and that's in the open space plan, and I think it's in the MVP plan and the hazard mitigation plan, the idea of getting an engineering plan to improve the stormwater management on roads. And, the first stumbling block is that you have to get an engineering study conducted, and that's expensive. You can unpack that engineering study and decide how you're going to fund it. But my phone's going off, but hold on.
Okay.
But that was my thought.
Got it. Other thoughts people have?
Well,
Leslie, go for it.
I think we need a grant writer. We need some money for a grant writer. There are people who do that professionally, and we wouldn't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, maybe that's in the climate adaptation fund, but
Yeah, no. It's an interesting idea. I was trying to figure out how. Well, we throw it out, let the select board figure out how to sort of where to hold it. Because I think some of these things, it's sort of like we're not there yet, but we want to make sure that the pot of money is sort of put aside so that when we get there. Gail?
well, the other thing is,
Yeah.
Again, with the community solar, to put aside some of the money to start that project or to work on that project or to, help. I know that Co-op Power could potentially help us write the grant, but I still spent a lot of time, as Gail said, on describing it. And I think that is part of the solution for that money. It relates to the school roof and it relates to our energy footprint.
Well, it could be, I mean, if I would take that further, I would say paying for someone to do an assessment of opportunities around community solar, which would be locations or approach, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Gail, did you have something? You were waving your fingers.
I was just going to say, I would put the engineering and this description as our two committee suggestions. Those are good, solid stuff.
There.
How about just given that we can see, at the fire station and at the town hall, that there are places where more mast-mounted solar could go up as a no-brainer. It doesn't need engineering because the space is there and it's an extension. So we extend some of the systems and ask for 80,000 or $100,000 to do it, and they'll say no to 100,000 and maybe we'll get 50,000. So but that way I wonder whether we can just ask for money as a placeholder and not have an actual thing to, I mean, the ARPA money might not even allow someone to just put it in a kitty for a while. I don't know what the constraints are, but often that's not an option. But yeah, we could specifically ask for an amount of money to extend some of the town systems that have space.
Cool. Leslie? Oh, you muted. Leslie, you muted.
Yeah, I like that idea, Graham, because there's plenty of paved areas even where the town garage is and the fire station and, I don't know who owns the post office or, there are plenty of places that we have not used yet. And so I think that's a great idea.
Parking lot at the school.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
well,
would
that-
that'd be,
Yeah, that was one of the things I said in the minutes with the community solar on the school roof and parking lot like they did in East Hampton's co-op. Yeah. Yeah,
But these are-
parking lot at the athletic club.
Well,
That's-
these would be called municipal power,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
yeah, the AC is private.
Yeah.
If you have any other ideas, just shoot me a quick email the next day or two, and then I'll get this off to the select board, but I think this is a good list. Who knows how much competition we have for good ideas.
Mhm.
So I think the rest of our time, which at least should be half an hour, and if we can do a smidge more, but what I wanted to do, what we talked about is having sort of just a freewheeling conversation where, we had a presentation about aggregation, we had a presentation about community solar. We've sort of talked a little bit about municipal solar, and if there's anything that sort of bubbled up, but we didn't have time to sort of process either of those presentations and compare them or think about next steps or recommendations. And it seems like even if we don't come up with a decision, we might come up with some decisions and recommendations, but if nothing else, we should just discuss them. So I'll just open it up and see if people want to start. They're all somewhat connected. Nate?
Yeah, when we last discussed community choice aggregation, we had stuck a pin on this sort of fork in the road around market aggregation versus public aggregation as two strategic approaches to moving forward with a CCA plan, if you will. If there was consensus that was a direction we wanted to go, and I just wanted to voice that sort of since we last met, I was sort of digging into those two scenarios and what Amherst, Pelham, Northampton are doing with public aggregation, I think is probably possible through scale. So by joining those communities, they're able to achieve a certain threshold of users of electricity. And I think one of the reasons that the most 99% of the smaller towns in Western Massachusetts go with the market aggregation approach. So they get a broker that then helps them walk through all of the steps around developing a plan and working through the paperwork and helping to solicit bids, is because it's just a scale issue, and it's a lot easier for towns like ours to work with a broker that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because I know that that's kind of where we left the CCA discussion. Yeah, I think market aggregation or working with a broker is probably the way that would work best for a town like Shutesbury.
Yeah.
And also in some of the documents that you sent along to us, it was clear that we could start with the market, let the broker do the heavy lifting, and then later do it ourselves after we've seen how it works and could be instructed, hire our own people to do the blah, 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 day-to-day, da, da, da. But let the guys who know what they're doing set it up in the first place, which seems to me an ideal situation.
yeah, I totally agree. Because the things that are out there with Northampton and those towns, they're still working out how to do it. And we could join them in 3 years' time or whatever. And if they were going well, but it's so much more straight. We can just launch with a broker, and that just gets us going and gives us positive experience of it straight away. It obviously works.
Yeah.
I think my 2 cents on that is, my tendency is wanting to do DIY, but in this case, I think not doing it for the reasons you guys suggested. I mean, I think what just reinforced with Gail was the response from the survey that, there's current interest in doing something. And so if we can get off the mark quicker and actually have an impact for people, that would be good. And the DIY part is we can come up with 3 choice options that reflect the values of Shutesbury. So, in my mind, I've been thinking,
That's,
you sort of have the vanilla save money, you have the green, and then you have the appropriate siting, don't cut down forest version. And that would make, that's the Shutesbury version of how to do it.
Cool.
Yep.
So other thoughts on it? Yeah.
and we do have to go through aggregation as a community before we decide, do we want to join Pelham? Do we want to join any of these other groups? So this whole mechanical procedure is required up front anyway. And happily, it requires a town meeting approval. And we know there's going to be a special town meeting in September to vote on the school roof project. So my suggestion is that we go ahead and set this up, ask the select board for approval to be on the agenda at the special meeting in September, and then start our own community educational and promotional campaign. We can use our website, we can use town announce, we can use forums, we can use Henry, and anything you can think of, we can use to reach people, to explain what it means to be aggregated, how this is going to affect their electrical. A lot of comments in the survey: electricity is too expensive. They go to wood in the winter because they can't afford the electric bill.
Yeah, and just before you speak, Nate, the one thing that I was thinking, if we were to go forward, the model that I think is the whole fiber muni system, that, that was a lot of money, and, it was done beautifully by Gail Huntress in
Yep.
terms, and the rest of the MLP crowd, including Graham. But, it was educational, and, it was big dollars, and it was hugely successful. So I think taking that as a model of sort of walking people through and helping them understand would be great.
And we have that model.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Nate. Oh, you're muted.
Wrong button. Thanks. Yeah, I was just going to add that the warrant article language can be drafted in a way that supports going alone through a broker and working with other communities as well. So I did make an effort to kind of include that capability in the article language that I circulated.
Okay, so I have two a point and a question, I guess. The question is, does anyone have an objection to going forward? This is sort of the one question. And then I think the other part is, my understanding is going forward and recommending community aggregation does not preclude any community solar, that they're not mutually exclusive, which is an important point. Is that a correct understanding?
Yes.
That is
Okay.
also my understanding.
I believe so.
Yeah. So are we all agreed? I think
We probably need a vote.
I was just going to say that. Someone want to make a motion? This is vote worthy.
I move we proceed with presenting CCA to a vote to the community.
Okay, you got that, Zoe? Oh, you muted. Community choice aggregation.
Yes. Proceed with presenting community choice aggregation to a vote to the,
I said
Town
town meeting.
meeting, to a special town meeting.
to a special town, okay, to be voted on for at town meeting?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Do
Do I
we
get
have
a,
to do do we have to do a warrant petition?
no, we have to just ask the select board to put it on the warrant. We're an official committee.
All right.
Yeah.
We can sponsor, we can sponsor
You have
this.
to take the activist hat off. You're official.
All right.
So do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, cool. So, Gail,
Hi,
Nate,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Zoe,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, our first substantive vote, I think. That's exciting.
it
Um,
is
Cool.
action.
Now, so that was really efficient. So how about we pick up the community solar discussion a little bit? Well, actually, let me ask you a question before we go forward. So has everyone seen Nate sent out an updated version of warrant articles? I think we don't have to, it's a little ahead of ourselves because we have to talk to the select board, but if we were to soon share it with the select board, does that feel okay to everybody? It's got enough integrity to it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
It'll also demystify it for them too, because they'll be so happy that there's a model.
Yes.
But wouldn't it be the article that you would take to the select board to ask for their approval on the warrant?
Yeah, well, I think what I would say is we're recommending this. I don't know how much they even know what this is. We can attach it as, what we're recommending. It would, would have to go to Donna McNichol and she would look it over. Donna being our town council anyway. So I think it makes it real because they can read it, but they still might not get a sense of what that is.
Michael, maybe you'll find that Nate has already done a summary of what it is. Because
Yeah, on the bottom.
yeah. And then so then they only need to read a half page and they'll know what it is.
Cool.
And Michael, do you as chair present this to the select board?
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah,
Excellent.
happy. Cool. So shifting gears.
Wait, Nate's got his,
Yeah, just
Oh, sorry.
sorry. Yeah, no, just really quickly though. Yeah, Michael, I think you'd mentioned that warrant article summaries aren't always included at this stage in the development, and I just wanted to suggest or maybe ask, like, where in the process, because it's something I'd be happy to get a head start on. We would perhaps develop a more expansive FAQ that would be part of educating the select board potentially, but also just the broader community, because I think there are a lot of issues, particularly around what does this mean if I have net metering? A lot of issues that we could proactively assuage people's concerns or just hit on in advance.
Yeah.
Is that something I should get started on?
The FAQ list may be out there already because so many towns have done this, Nate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I do think I'll just jump in for a sec, Gail. While the model's in place, if we go the market way, it makes it easier, but I think it's still ambitious in terms of the education engagement of residents. So let's assume town meeting somewhere between mid-September and the end of October. That would be my hunch. So it would mean, starting to develop a plan for, a community presentation, whether it's, I don't know if we would do it. Most likely it'd be on Zoom is my guess. I don't know if people are ready to go into the school yet. But if we use the broadband model, it would be having a PowerPoint, having the ability for people to ask questions, putting, at least a handout and some materials in advance up on the website. My point was, in the warrant article, there's usually not a summary. And if we were at a regular in-person town meeting, we'd have a handout. I think if we went through the process, if I remember correctly with the broadband stuff, is we had at least one big community meeting with presentations and then questions. But then when we voted at town meeting, there's also handouts that summarized changes and updates. So the handout is sort of secondary in terms of the timing, the presentation prep and figuring out, I'm assuming you might be one of the people presenting, but, who else is involved? I think we'd want to invite Donna McNichol, who's the lawyer, to be present, but maybe there's someone from the FinCom or select board or, another town. I think we have to strategize on that. Gail?
I'd be happy to work with Nate on developing the page and the webpage. We have the projects ongoing, and this would be a perfect one to have a page, and FAQs could be part of that. I also asked Gail Huntress several weeks ago what she used for communication and the buildup, and I have her answer, which is quite detailed.
Cool,
How they did outreach and blah, 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 which I'm happy to share with you, Nate.
great, cool. And Graham, I mean, you were on the MLP at that point, right? Or the predecessor?
But Gal was in charge of communications even in that, yeah, she and Asha
Yeah,
were
it was superb.
huge enthusiasts. And you know, that was a much heavier lift because it involved spending capital
People had to
money.
pay money, yeah.
And there was engagement, and because people knew they needed something. So you know, this is something that is easier to sell because so many towns are doing it. It's already been proved, and you don't need to spend money up front to save money. So it's like it's a so much easier
It's a
thing.
deal.
Yeah, it's the easiest thing to sell, I think, if you keep it simple.
Cool.
It should be kept simple.
Cool, great. Well, I will communicate to the select board, and then we can, you know, if you guys start moving on in the background in terms of developing stuff, that would be great. And thank you, Gail, for volunteering. So before Miriam cuts out in 15 minutes, I do want to, we might not wrap it up in 15 minutes, but with the community solar, based on what we heard, do people have either thoughts, feedback, ideas for next steps? What are we thinking about community solar?
I think the first thing you have to find is land, some space,
Or location?
a location. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to have, well, one of the things that Mary Ann's suggested was that, for instance, the parking lot at the co-op, the installation is not on the property of the folks who are benefiting. And I was wondering if Co-op Power might be interested in sort of analyzing who in our neighborhood, like Home Depot and Hadley Roof, or whoever might be willing to have their surface have our panels on it for our municipal solar, given that we have such limits on land or rooftops in a wooded area that we can use to any advantage. So that would require, I guess I'm asking, would she be willing to make an assessment of our town and neighboring areas where we might locate panels for our municipal solar?
And one thing I'll just add as an update is I reached out to Aaron Vega, who used to be a state rep, who's now the head of the planning department in Holyoke, figuring, you know, there's lots of discussion about putting it in places that are, you know, industrial or brownfields or whatever. And I know Aaron, and his politics are very good. And, you know, they have Holyoke Gas and Electric down there. And the takeaway, although he was interested, it really affirms what Graham said, and I think influences Gail's point, which is, my thinking was, wouldn't it be great if we can't do it in Shutesbury to put it somewhere that's municipally owned elsewhere? You know, so that it's truly municipally owned. And he was saying that it really comes down to the fact that there's no model. You know, the model is based on energy credits, you know, which is taxation. So
Right.
if the entity doesn't pay taxes,
I don't have it, yeah.
there's no advantage. And an HG&E, I think, doesn't need to do it, and the city didn't need to do it. So I think, Gail, to your point, it's about shopping around for private entities who would host it on our behalf and therefore get the benefit of the RECs. But you know, that relationship.
Is that the model, Michael? Because is that a private entity in lieu of a lease is getting the smart credits?
When you say in lieu of a lease, what do you mean?
Well, I was trying to understand this idea that you get a private entity to host it and then take advantage of the RECs, which I think you meant.
Yeah.
Credits.
Yes. Right.
And would that be in lieu of leasing, or would the town still be paying for a lease for that use?
I don't know. I think, the challenge, and I think this is, Leslie, I see your hand, so I'll get to you in half a second. I think, what Mary Ann described is also a little different. It's not like there's different ways of doing it. So we could, people would come together and do small community shared solar.
Right.
But I think the issue, if you're dealing with private, is what's the control?
Negotiation.
Yeah, well, you'd have to come up with contractual something or other, but Leslie, then Graham.
Am I unmuted? Well, I know I've had community solar co-op power for I don't know how many years, and I learned from the last presentation by Marianne that my electricity is coming from the Berkshires. So I think it would be a good idea to have Marianne come back and talk about financing and talk about location. I know at one point she was saying the Sirius community where she lives, they're interested in perhaps building a structure that could also have the panels on it. So I don't know if we have enough of those places in Shutesbury or if we need to go like to the mall. But I do know that with the community solar, the way that I wrote it up in the minutes, it's possible to get grants and then we own it. So I don't know how we own it if it's like on top of Home Depot, like Miriam's saying, like if it's somewhere else, then the town actually starts making money. The grant mostly pays for it, co-op power. The whole thing was described in the minutes, how we would flip it and own it and then start generating our own revenue from it. And I don't really know about location because like I said, my electric bill these days is zero. So I don't know about the aggregates, how much better it's going to get. But it doesn't necessarily have to be in town. But I don't really know. It might be like maybe we work with Pelham. They've got that huge fire station. Maybe they're, maybe it's like, I don't know, but I would love to see Marianne come back and talk about certain options, how that works and how to get the financing for it.
Cool. Graham?
The tax credits that the federal tax credits that Michael was mentioning before, currently it's 26%. It's going down a little, but that's the thing the town can't get, and therefore one gets a private entity to be the owning thing for 5 to 7 years while they get the tax credit, and then at the end of that, there's an arrangement to resell it to a public crowd like a municipality. So that's that detail. It's the tax credit that is currently the issue, that we as a town wouldn't economically build something for ourselves.
And Graham, is your understanding, if it was built on, say, Home Depot, for example, that what would be originally owned by Home Depot and then transferred or flipped to the town would be the arrays itself, is basically it? Because it's not land, it's just a set of arrays on a rooftop or in a canopy or something.
Yep, it's a piece of equipment that we could be we could own it, I'm sure.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions about this? I mean, my hunch is before we have Marianne come back, I think it might be worthwhile, if we're interested, is to sort of, and if we agree as a committee, we want to ask her to do this, but sort of do a little bit of analysis of possible locations, maybe run some basic numbers so we have a sense of like what it looks like. My sense is we can look at locations in town. We should definitely start there, but then if there isn't sufficient, maybe there's logical places that would make sense. So if we give her a green light to say, yes, we're interested, can you do some homework for us? And then we can have her report out on what she found. We're having a less theoretical conversation and more a little bit grounded in information. So does that work for people?
Sounds good.
Okay, so I think I'm happy to write her that email. Leslie, I'll CC you just since you've been part of the process, and I think that makes sense. It seems like it's the next responsible fact-finding step in a process. So I think we actually covered everything.
So who's going to do that?
Well, I'll write to her and see if she's willing.
No, but our assessments in town, who's going to do that?
Well, I think she could probably, I mean, why wouldn't she be able to do it? Because we have the open space plan, which is very detailed.
That doesn't tell you about shade on rooftops.
Well, they have LiDAR. I mean, there's LiDAR and stuff, which is what all the commercial installers are doing. But one would assume that she can tell us what she can tell us, and she can tell us what she doesn't know, and then give us a homework assignment.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
In my conversations with her, if she doesn't have the answer, she digs and she'll point us in some good directions. And if she doesn't know, my conversations with her, she's really honest, and she lives in town. So, it's not like she's coming in from somewhere else. Like, she's really trying to work creatively to make it happen in the town she lives in as well.
I think it's also good modeling for us that we shouldn't do it all. We can ask other people to help us. So cool. So since we are going to end on time, if not a smidge early, is everyone's good? I didn't leave anything out for a conversation. So the two things that I have.
Oh, I was just going to report.
Oh shit, Zoe, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go for it. Tell us about your Mary Ann discussion.
Yes. So I talked with her, and she was able to, we talked about workshops and she was able to get grant funding for 3 different workshops that I'm going to do.
So that's already in the can. She got the funding. Huh.
Mm-hmm. And
what are the workshops on?
I know the first one is going to be on wild fermented sodas. And people are going to come to the farm and pick flowers and learn how to make their own probiotic drinks.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm
Do you have a date?
Sometime in July, but I haven't pinned down the date yet.
Okay, well, let Gail know so she can put it on the website.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
But I interrupted you, so keep going. And don't rush.
And she also mentioned an event called Celebrate Shutesbury in the third weekend in September. And she was not sure if it was going to be able to happen. And it needs a leader. And she'll do it if no one else steps up. But it also seems like she's overwhelmed with a lot of things. So that was something that I flagged as maybe we could hook her up with a leader to help with that. And in that way, we could also kind of guide Celebrate Shutesbury to have a lot of representation of things that we would like represented related to energy and climate. So that was exciting to me. Like, I would love to have a booth there, or
Let's celebrate Green Shutesbury.
yeah.
I think, so historically, Celebrate Shutesbury was led by the Shutesbury Education Foundation, and then that generation of folks sort of went by the wayside.
Ancient history.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it started. And then Jessica Belanger did it for a bunch of years, and then we haven't had it for a few years because of the pandemic. So, organizing it is a heavy lift, but I think if there is a Celebrate Shutesbury, that having a presence and being able for us to engage on some of this stuff, that's a good opportunity. And traditionally, it's been a lot of young families to attend because there's a bounce house and baseball throwing it stuff. And so, sort of rounding it out and sort of making it, interesting to a range of households might be a really good opportunity. So that makes sense.
Yeah. And there isn't really an update on the online directory, except that it's, she said that there was an effort to make this online directory of people with local businesses and people with specific skills. And that it's kind of stalled.
Do you know was it the library that was leading it? Who was sort of the mover and shaker for that?
I'm not sure. No.
Is that the old Bard?
Hi, Miriam.
Miriam? Oh, Miriam's leaving. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Miriam. Take good care.
Bye, Miriam.
So I missed that last bit, Zoe. Is someone guessing who might have been the lead?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Was Marianne referring to the Bard? Did she use that word?
She didn't. She called
Okay.
it the online directory.
Okay.
Because there was someone was doing the business something or other, but I don't know who was taking the lead on that.
Penny Kim and Susan somebody, but that's decades ago.
Okay. So it sounds like if we want to do that, we might need to revive it or do a new initiative to sort of gather that information.
And online is good. Yeah.
Yeah. It was paper before?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense. And so it sounds, if I were to summarize, so it sounds like you're already doing some stuff because you're doing a July workshop, which is great. We got an opportunity, just keep it on our radar, that if Celebrate Shutesbury is going to happen, that we can figure out how to do that. And maybe you can be the point person for just if you can track its status, will it be or will it not be? And then you can bring it back and we can have a conversation. And then I think depending upon your interest in, availability, we can figure out somewhere in the next, short to medium time, how we'd want to proceed with an online directory, but that's sort of like a bigger project. Does that make sense? Leslie, were you raising your hand? You muted. Okay. I got the head shaking. But so Zoe, does that make sense as a summary?
Yes.
Cool. And thank you for talking to her. I mean, Marian is a total resource. So,
Yeah. It was really, really nice to talk to her about the history of the library as well.
Yeah. And one thing I talked to her this weekend, one thing she pointed out, which was really interesting is, and I think it's a function of broadband, that there's a lot of new young families that are moving to town, and they all come to the library as like one of the first stops.
Right.
So as we want to engage, people in the work, if there's new families coming to town, that might be, using the library and that connection might be a really helpful way to reach folks who don't, you move to town during a pandemic or right after pandemic, you don't know where to turn. You go to the library and maybe we can connect. So cool. Well, I'd say this was another really good meeting. I've got a couple of things for our next agenda, which is Nate's going to start us on our spreadsheet in terms of the MVP hazard mitigation priority items, and then we'll all look at it and we can talk about that next time. And then I'm going to follow up with Henry about the communicating sustainability effectively stuff. Leslie, and I'll reach out to Marianne, and I don't know necessarily if we'll have Marianne come the next time, but if not, then the time after that, it seems like we might want to give her a little bit of space. And before we go, let me just get the
And
calendar.
I'll report in on audit stuff.
Yes, thank you. And I've got, let's see, so today is the 21st, right? With June. So 1, 2, so if we met on July 12th, I think that's 3 weeks from now. Does that work for people?
Hold on,
Tuesday, July 12th?
let me get there.
Yeah, watch that.
July 12th. Yeah, I already have that in the calendar.
Well, there you go. Cool. Okay, so that's a date. I'll post it and great meeting, everybody.
Yes,
We're-
indeed.
Everyone's doing phenomenal work.
This is a great group.
Yeah. Couldn't have picked a better bunch of volunteers. That we all.
Couldn't have done.
Yeah. Great. Well, have a wonderful evening.
Okay, yeah.
You too.
bye-bye.
We move to adjourn.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah.
But I was just thinking.
I would like to move to adjourn.
I
Thank you,
second.
Nate.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Nate. We'll just say that everyone roll call.
All
now.
eyes. Hand
Aye,
up, right.
aye.
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 Aye, aye, aye.
Okay,
Aye.
Nate, can we go now?
We can go now, I think.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
cool. Thank you.
Good night, y'all.